Welcome back to my big fat zit. Well, these Thor movies keep surprising me at the end, and it's always based around Loki. So these movies are obviously all about Loki and Thor, and I don't even know where to begin. I don't have a script, I don't have any notes. I just have what's in my head, and I'm trying to make sense of what I just saw. So come along on this journey with me. This movie was about once every 3,000 years, all the worlds come together in an alignment that causes each of their boundaries to be blurred together, so you can easily get from one to another. And they kind of use those ancient alien lines of energy lines as coordinates to places where you can move from world to world to world. And at the very beginning, we've discovered this one place. It's basically a discrepancy in the universe. So if you throw something down over this 2-story balcony, it won't hit the floor and it'll just come back up through the sky and fall back down and just keep going until you catch it again. At the very beginning, we get some Lord of the Rings history. It wants to be Lord of the Rings as bad or even more badly than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe wanted to be Lord of the Rings. So after this discrepancy in the universe is found, Thor comes back to Earth, picks up Jane. They end up going back to Asgard. In Asgard, she's kind of worked on a little bit. And then there's this huge war that takes place. Meanwhile, Loki has been arrested for basically trying to enslave the human world and become in his word, benevolent god to them. One thing I really like about this movie is its moral ambiguity. You see both Thor and Loki do a lot of bad things. And one thing you see from Thor is you see that Thor, when he disobeys his dad, he does so kind of by enlisting almost every time Loki to be kind of the scapegoat for him. So you can definitely view both Thor and Loki as the good guy and the bad guy. It's really not hard for me to look at Loki and to think that he is actually the good guy in this situation and he has been taken advantage of. Loki's adoption plays a lot into this, because with any adoption, you should feel as though you are a child of that person. But in this case, Loki does not feel like he is a child of his parents. Loki's father has done everything but just completely disown Loki. And Loki has really just been trying this whole time to say, I was given the birthright to be king, but he never gets to be king. Loki's just simply trying to basically crusade for the truth. He's trying to say, this is what I was told, this is the way I was raised, and now you have taken that all away from me because of one decision that I made. Whereas Thor makes also poor decisions, does things that his father does not want him to do, but he does it with the amount of tact and diplomacy that he needs to get away with it. When Thor goes to talk to Odin, I believe his name is Odin, basically asking his dad, we've seen what the elven people have done to our world, and how basically this elven ruler or king in the pre-story killed all of his warriors to become the victor in a war between them and Asgard. Basically, Odin says that he will do the same thing. And Thor asks, what's the difference between you and the elven people? I think that same parallel ends up coming in when Thor disobeys his father in a calculated move because he believes that the betterment of the kingdom will happen by disobeying his father. And then he enlists Loki as a scapegoat that allows him to feel as though he could get away with it. The amount of complexity there and interest between all of these characters is fascinating to me. I feel like these movies are not the most interesting movies. If you're looking at it like from a beeline perspective. Basically, there's this discrepancy, there's a war. We go back to understanding the discrepancy a little bit more, and then we finish up with one more war that is brought on by Thor doing this preemptive act basically against his father. Then at the end, there's a huge giant twist. It looks as though he may have either killed or imprisoned his father or switched bodies with his father in some sort of a diplomacy move. Rules of the movie universe are kind of different. You don't have a Chekhov's gun in the same way. Because this is a cinematic universe, sometimes you have a Chekhov's gun that isn't resolved until a movie or two movies later. So I have to wonder, they set up the idea that Loki can both change himself and he can also change, like he changed Thor into Thor's little girlfriend. Did Loki take someone and project or change him into another person, into a Loki pretender? So we found out that Loki died. But then at the very end, we see that Loki has actually taken over the throne and is now taking the place of his father, who we never did find out if he died or not. So I am having all of these questions in my head. Did Loki somehow figure out how to tell Odin that in order to protect Thor, he needed to pretend to be Loki? Or did he work out a deal with someone else? I don't know. And I'm really interested in watching the next movies and trying to see what actually happened in this case. Because Loki is a very fascinating character to me. And I feel like there's so many different ways that they could possibly resolve this. So I'm interested in what kind of creative way they do it. I hope they do it in some sort of a creative way. We did also find out that Loki is still in the head scientist guy. Doesn't really compute with everything I've seen so far. I mean, I know he's eccentric and he runs around in his underwear and goes to Stonehenge and strips naked. But anyway, even though the storyline is somewhat light, there's just a lot of interesting characters, and the biggest interest comes between Loki, Thor, and the father and their father. And then of course also the family dynamic there. Jane is basically Wonder Bread. Like there's not a whole lot that's interesting with her. She is a good supporting character for this role. But it's really the family dynamic that is fascinating to me about Thor the Dark World. So that's what I liked about it. I'd love to hear from you guys. What is it that you like about Thor the Dark World? Leave your comments down below. Subscribe to this channel so that you can prove to the world that you're a true Disney fan. I'll talk to you guys again in another couple weeks.